Hey there and welcome. Today I'm super excited to cover something with you in a way that I do a lot in my day job? Question mark. But in my day-to-day, I am a sales engineer, so I work a lot with clients and give lots of presentations on numbers and present information, hopefully in a digestible format. That's what I get paid to do. And so today is one of my first videos where I'm going to present information about the different platforms that your business could be on. And there's a ton of different platforms. So hopefully I'm going to focus on the 6 to 8 most common platforms that you're going to see businesses on, like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and many others. But I want to do it by the numbers. I want to help you understand if this platform is right for your business to be on. And to do this, I've had to put together a ton of different research. I've leveraged a lot of different resources, all of which will be found in the links below each of my slides. And I'll actually put this whole presentation in the comment section below or in the description below so that you can see that. You can see the sources, go right out to the sources. As sort of a note on that, some numbers might be a little dated. So we do have to take those with a grain of salt. And we can look at the trends and we can say, okay, it's probably more than that today, but it is worth noting some of the released information isn't always 2020. I've done my best to grab 2020 information. Sometimes it's 2019. Sometimes it's a little bit older, but not a lot has changed in the mix, so I can still talk about that particular thing. So without further ado, you probably already gathered what we're going to talk about today based on the title of the video, but we are going to talk all about Twitter. And is it right for your business and should you use it? So we're going to cover a few different things. What is a presentation without an agenda? We're going to consider 3 categories. This is going to be the trend that we cover with most of these platforms. We're going to cover the demographic, what sort of media is successful on that platform, and engagement, time of day, half-life of a post, frequency. Sometimes we're gonna mix those elements up depending on the platform because we don't always have that sort of insight, but it is my goal to help you understand who you're talking to, what's successful on that platform, and how to drive engagement with that platform. Keeping all of that in mind, we're gonna get into some numbers. This stuff is gonna get heady. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's gonna go in the weeds a little bit. It's going to be numbers focused, but hopefully I can present this to you in a way that is somewhat entertaining and somewhat tolerable to get through so that you can make the right decision for your business, because I'm going to tell you right now, not every business is meant to be on every platform. It can be, but it's not going to be the most successful on every platform. So keeping all that in mind, we'll go first on to demographic, talking about users. So number of Twitter users. As of 2019, there's 330 million monthly active users with 145 million daily active users. That is a tremendous number of people. And given the trends with COVID and in 2020, these numbers look much, much different. I'll be honest with you. There are reports across the board around engagement with media and with social media specifically have gone through the roof. So I can tell you this is small compared to what people and how people are engaging today. But it's a good place to start to know, hey, this is the sort of frequency of users this platform is going to have. And compared to some other platforms, it's pretty high up there. There's only going to be a couple of platforms that might get, or for sure are getting more viewers and users than Twitter, but it is one of the top platforms in the industry as far as what users or how many users that platform has. So keeping that in mind, let's look a little bit at the age demographic of who is on this platform. So 63% of Twitter users are between the age of 35 and 65, which is crazy. It's a little older than some people might expect. If generally with social media, maybe outside of Facebook, if you were to grab any stranger off the street and say, how old do you think the average user is on a particular platform? Most people are going to guess young, but you got to keep in mind Twitter's age. Twitter has been around for a very long time. And so those people that were 35 were in their mid-20s. When that platform was initially released. I remember when Twitter was released, I remember jumping on the platform and going, what is this? What is this 140 character limit? And this isn't enough to get a message, but that was the challenge. That was the challenge. How can you get a message across in 140 characters? And how can you be engaging? And then there was a whole bunch of other evolutions of Twitter over the years, and different features and functionalities that came and went and so on and so forth. But it starts to make it a little bit more sense when you think about it that way, that a lot of users adopted it really early on and have stuck with the platform over the years. You also find that a lot of political content, sports content, analysis is on Twitter as well. It's the place to have a conversation. I always sort of give the example that Twitter is like going to a networking event where everybody's having conversations, everybody's standing in little huddles and talking about something. And at any point, you can walk up, join that conversation, and hopefully start adding value. And hopefully you're not just detracting from the conversation or spitting vile things into that conversation, which does happen, unfortunately, because it is a public platform. But keeping that in mind, there's a lot of industry professionals that are having conversations on Twitter. It is a bit of a networking platform, often used in networking events. I've seen this over and over again in networking events that I've joined, where they have a hashtag or they have an event that you're following. They say, hey, put this hashtag in there so people can join in on the conversation and also give feedback. So keeping that in mind, you can kind of see how that age demographic can shift upwards, where you have industry professionals, a lot of experts in their area having conversations, and then other people want to join in and network with those individuals. So most experts aren't going to be younger individuals. They're people that have worked and gained experience and a level of expertise in a particular subject. So that's sort of an interesting concept to think about. 63% in that 35 to 65. From a gender analysis, and this again, this study was only conducted in a male or female aspect. They didn't include other genders in this study, but keeping that in mind and putting that aside for a second, 34% of users are female versus 66% are male. Think about that. That's really interesting. That's a really interesting divide. So basically a third of the platform is female and 2/3 of the platform is male. So it's a very male dominated platform with users in the 35 to 65 years age range, right? This can help you make some decisions about your products. For instance, if it's a younger targeted, female targeted product or service, it doesn't have the greatest reach on this platform right off the bat. That's one thought that's turning up there already. It's like, okay, if I am a young female oriented product or service and I'm looking to grow my business, is Twitter the best place for me to do that? It might still be a great place to communicate with your users, but is it the place where I want to focus time and money and effort on growing my business, given this sort of information? Just a thought as we move through this. It is estimated over 20% of US internet users access Twitter on a monthly basis. This is just talking US markets. This is not talking the entire globe. We'll talk about that in a moment. But if 20% of internet users, 1/5 of people that are on the internet are on Twitter, that's huge reach. That's huge, right? Because you got to think that's a lot of people on the internet. And if your product, if what you're selling or service that you're selling is built in the digital realm, which this entire channel, this entire platform is talking about, that's huge reach. 1/5 of the US that uses the internet can be reached on Twitter. Keep that in mind. Then we talk geography. What are the next largest markets for Twitter? Well, I built this myself, so if it's a little dodgy, you can blame me. But you got the UK at 13.7 million Twitter users. This is going to be this is daily active users, and versus what we saw in the US at 140 million. So 13.7 million. The Russia is 13.9 million, and surprisingly, Japan, 35.65 million. I wanted to pick the next top 3 most daily active users on the international scale. So putting all of those numbers together, so with some quick math, we're looking at about just over 60 million daily active users. Still only about half of the US as far as daily active users, but it's nothing to snuff at, right? It's something to keep in mind from an international perspective. So if I'm selling my products or services outside of the US, or if my audience is outside of the US, if you're building more of a platform company, then you want to say, okay, if that audience might be in Japan because I'm talking about Japanese related subjects, be it traveling in Japan, Japanese food, whatever it might be, it's going to start grabbing those individuals. But if I'm really focused on a country that doesn't have a large Twitter following, again, does it make sense to have Twitter be a part of your growth strategy, right? So keeping in mind where Twitter is popular and where it's being used across the globe, and how does that relate to your business? So from a media perspective, this one was sort of fun to find. 500 million tweets per day. That's insane. What is there? 330 monthly active users on the platform. So that means, and then 140 daily active users in the US. So obviously that's not all of the users on this platform. So you're talking, people are posting multiple times per day on Twitter. And the media types are going to change. Some are just text posts, some are videos, some are GIFs, some are these new Fleets feature. I know we're bringing you this video hot right after Fleets have been released. They're released a few days ago. I don't know exactly when I'll post this video, so Fleets might be old news by then. But 500 million tweets per day. So keep that in mind. Tons and tons of activity. This is also going to contribute to some additional information I'm going to share here with you about half-life of a tweet. How long does it live? How long is it discoverable for, right? Again, another important thing to keep in mind. Let's talk about those media types. We got text, we got pics, we got GIFs, we got videos, and the new Fleets feature on Twitter. So your standard text post is going to be a calls to action. It's going to be general thoughts. They can be quips. I always think of Wendy's. Wendy's is great at the Twitter banter, right? For a lot of personalities that might exist on Twitter, it's generally a thought. But the most engaging posts are going to be some sort of call to action. So be them a question. You're asking your audience a question, or the Twitterverse a question. You're putting a poll out there. I can also put that as sort of a text post. It's something to elicit engagement, right? Always asking a question, somebody's thoughts on something, putting out a poll on something, or something breaking, right? Some news that might be breaking in your personal life, business life, however you choose to use that platform. That's sort of the second part of this conversation we'll save to the end, is in and around, okay, I clearly identifying your Twitter strategy, sticking to that strategy, and then how do you elicit engagement from just a standard text post around that strategy? Pics get 150% more engagement than a standard text post, including this. Including image is a real easy way to massively increase your engagement level on any post. Again, if you're a personality like an athlete or a social media influencer or some sort of professional in your industry, posting a picture is going to get the most engagement. And this doesn't always necessarily need to be you. This could be almost, I'm thinking like a stock photo that might help exemplify what you're saying, or some photo of maybe what you're talking about, right? So say I'm a sports analyst. I'm an up-and-coming sports analyst with my own blog and podcast, right? I'm talking about a specific athlete. And so all I do is simply post an image of that athlete that I'm talking about. It's a subsidizing element to help drive engagement. And since Twitter uses cards and embeds images, then that post, when you see it, is immediately going to be more grabbing than just a text post. So keep that in mind. GIFs get 55% more engagement. And you can use GIFs in a variety of different ways. You can make your own GIFs. You can use the canned GIF search engine, use Giphy, use Google's, keyboard for your phone. I just recently switched to an iPhone. So on Android, you could actually have a Giphy keyboard. Or what would I have? I had the G board, the Google keypad. And part of that was Giphy. And so I could pull GIFs up, search GIFs very easily, and then input them into a post. But those are another way to drive image. If you can make them yourself on the fly, those actually do just a little bit better and are kind of cool to make if you can figure out how to do those. There's tons of different apps out of there to make your own GIFs, but another way to engage with your audience, which is just a little bit better than a pic. And then finally, you're going to, or I should say, a little bit less effective than a pic. And then finally, videos. This is a difficult frontier for most. For some reason, somebody that can write and speak beautifully may not be too awesome at being in front of a camera. I'm a little bit of the reverse. I feel more comfortable sitting in front of a camera and making a video and talking about something than I do trying to write it out. It just comes more naturally. I have the ability to share expression and share an idea. But other people might not be that way. Or it just might not make sense for your brand, right? Maybe I'm selling a physical product that isn't very dynamic, right? It's, for a lack of a better example, it's a nice fridge magnet, right? It's a static object. It sits on the fridge. I don't know why I use this example, but we're going with fridge magnet. You sell fridge magnets. And it's on the fridge, and there's not a whole lot of movement that you could put in there. Maybe it's how it clicks in, and you could put a little GIF. But for the most part, it's going to be an image, right? It makes more sense for your brand than a video does. So again, don't try to put a square peg in a round hole here. If it makes sense, if you can add value by producing video content, it's going to get 10x the engagement. over over a standard post. I personally like videos. I've gotten the most engagement anytime I posted a video. So when I do updates, it's not just a text update. I might give a brief synopsis of what is in that video, but it's mostly the video message itself giving that update. And then finally, Fleets. So Fleets just came out, which is Twitter's version of Instagram and Facebook stories. For a lot of people, and I agree, that was an idea worth stealing. It works on Twitter. It's because of how, pun intended, fleeting a post is on Twitter. The fact that they have a story that's just there for a moment in time and then it's gone is a nice little addition to the platform. Does it create confusion in the overall social media market as where do I post this? Does this go on my Instagram story or my Facebook story or my Twitter story or Twitter Fleets? Where do I put this? It does create that sprawl and that confusion for sure, but is it good for the platform? I think so. I think it's a good fit. Being that it's so new, we don't have any data or analytics on how they perform, how they help engagement, and it's new, so new that it doesn't have the depth of features when it comes to editing that you would see in like an Instagram and Facebook story approach, or even a LinkedIn story. All of these things are worth keeping. They are kind of late to the game because, Twitter was doing them. I actually forget who was doing it first, Twitter or Facebook, but since they're owned by the same company, they're that's kind of just one ecosystem. LinkedIn did it next, and then now Twitter's doing it. Where's the value? It all depends, again, about strategy, right? What are your pillar platforms? Where are you trying to drive content? And what are your supporting platforms? And what is your target with those supporting platforms? So if Twitter is a main platform or a primary platform versus a supporting platform, it's going to have a very different use for stories than maybe another platform might have for you. So that's just my 2 cents on Fleet so far. Think it's a good idea. To be determined where it's going to go. And 3, again, another to be determined on the analytics, the numbers of how it's performing. So a lot to still be uncovered with Fleets. Next, let's jump from what sort of media is successful and how media performs on Twitter to engagement. One of the first things I want to hit you with is, when is the best time to post on Twitter? So we got sort of a heat map here. The darker blue it is, the better time it is to post on Twitter. So you can see here the 2 best times to post on Twitter are Wednesday and Friday at 9 a.m. And this is going to be by your time zone. So looking at a national strategy, you're going to want to hit 9 a.m. in each time zone potentially for a post. We'll talk a little bit about if that makes sense in the half-life discussion. So you could do 9 a.m. Eastern, but then 9 a.m. Central, and then 9 a.m. Pacific time, right? And that will allow you to post 3 times throughout a day and hit the most common or the most populated time to hit Twitter. But then you can see other heat maps. Maybe like Tuesday at 10 a.m. is a little bit better than Tuesday at 9 a.m. And then Thursday, there's like 1 time to post. That's at 9 a.m. on Thursdays. Fridays, again, 9 a.m. We talked about that, but there are some good times a little bit later in the day. And then surprisingly, like Tuesdays, it's still going to be that 9, 10 o'clock time, but it has, again, a real big pickup at like 7, 8 o'clock at night. So interesting. I don't know why, but that is something worth noting. Monday's kind of light. The weekends are kind of light, but there are still some good times to post on those if it makes sense for your business. But keeping this heat map in mind when choosing the time of day to post might be really important for you and help you come up with a strategy around when to post if you're pre-building posts rather than trying to do on-the-fly conversations. And this brings me into half-life of a post. So half-life of a Twitter post is really interesting. It is a lot less than what you think it is. So at 24 minutes, 50% of the people that will engage with your post will have engaged with it. At 48 minutes, that means 75% of the people that will ever engage with that post have engaged with it. And at 72, it's 87.5, and 96, it's almost 94% engaged with. So meaning you have about an hour and a half lifespan of a Twitter post. And that circles back to that time of day to consider. So if it is only going to really survive an hour and a half before I get all of the likes and the retweets and everything, and again, this is all speaking on average. Obviously, if something goes viral and is picked up and carried for days, that's a very different thing than a standard post, right? And we all hope to go viral, but that's not the reality of it. The reality of it is it's a marathon, right? It's going to just take consistency. It's going to take playing the game and playing this accordingly. Again, to a min-maxer's approach. I'm an engineering mind, right? What's the most efficient way to do this? What's the most efficient way to tackle this? And that's what we're talking about here today. Doesn't always mean it's the best way for your business, so do keep that in mind. I'm just talking about by the numbers, what is the best time to do this? So keeping that in mind, if 9 a.m. is the hot time to post on Twitter, and I'm going to get most of my engagement in an hour and a half, I could bump that down to an hour and post at 9 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, and then 9 a.m. Pacific time, which will put me at 9, 10, and 11 o'clock Eastern time would be when I would want to schedule my posts if they're content delivery posts versus a sort of conversational post, interacting with your community, responding to questions, things like that. But if you are delivering content, it would be my personal suggestion to post in that cadence. And you probably noticed that I keep giving examples in 3 around Twitter, and that's because of this information here. Your engagement decreases after the 3rd tweet. And this is from businesses. This is how businesses engage. Now, this isn't necessarily like a personality so much or an expert in a field, but it was Social Bakers. They put together some research around frequency of posting. What's posting too much? What's posting too little? And you can kind of see here where you have the blue line, which is total engagement rate versus average tweet engagement rate. And they cross-sect just after three tweets per day. After that, you get depreciating returns. And you can see that the returns aren't terribly great to begin with on tweets. So keeping that in mind, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you're trying to deliver content after a 3rd tweet. Now, this isn't to, again, say that you shouldn't use Twitter for community engagement and conversation, because I'm going to circle back to one of my original statements that I feel like Twitter is that online networking event, right? You're going to see hot conversations occurring in your industry, and you can jump into those, add value, or even just glean information and let people know you're appreciative. Like, hey, really great information. I want to take that. So circling back to our example, putting this sort of all together, which we'll do here at the end, which is going to be right now. What and who would be the most ideal person, not to say this is the only person, but what is the most ideal target audience? If you're paying attention throughout this whole presentation, it should become fairly obvious. 1, they're going to be 35 to 65 years of age. They're going to be male, and they're going to be engaging with you at 9 a.m. throughout the week, regardless of your time zone. So just 9 a.m. in that given time zone. That would be your target audience. So if you're targeting night owls, for instance, maybe Twitter's not the best for you, because you could see there was a tremendous drop off after the morning. Most afternoon to evening wasn't a great time. And we saw that 66% of the platform is male. We also saw that 63% of the platform is individuals ages 35 to 65. So again, ideal audience. If that is where your product or service lands, Twitter is a great strategy for you. You should be on Twitter. You should be marketing on Twitter. You should be creating content, original, specifically created for Twitter content. If that is the age group, geography, demographic that you are targeting. However, it doesn't mean that your business can't still have a presence there. Again, think conversation, think networking. That can still work. So that's all about knowing your audience. Know your goals. Does Twitter align with your business objectives, right? Is it just going to be a time, energy, and effort drain, or is it going to lift your business? For me personally, I like using Twitter as a conversational tool and the networking tool. I don't have a content strategy for Twitter because I haven't felt it was, it would be great for the target demographic. It would be great for the sort of individuals that live on Twitter. So we have professionals and experts in their space. The sort of content that I create is would be great there. But my focus is on long tail content. I want to create evergreen content that can be referenced to later on and shared. I'm not trying to create viral content, flash in the pan content, or thought, I want to say thought leadership on Twitter, because what I want to create is things that will be shared and passed around and used as a reference point, not something that's going to die after an hour and a half, right? So for me, I don't have a content strategy for Twitter because of those reasons. Even though some of the pieces might be a good fit, all of the pieces weren't a good fit for my strategy. So I've reverted more to that conversational platform. For you in your business, it might make more sense, especially depending on how big of a community you can grow there. Obviously, as your community grows, the impact on that message and the type of message is going to change, because if you have a target audience that lives there and you want to get them certain types of information quickly, that's a great platform to do that as well. But it's not the best for that evergreen long tail type content or messaging. So do keep that in mind. Figure out what your objective is with Twitter, with your pillar and or supporting platforms, and then you can make the decision of what kind of content to create on Twitter. And then lastly, knowing your platform and what sort of media works on that platform. We went over all the media types, and Twitter covers them all, right? They have text-based, they have pics, they have GIFs, they have videos, and they have now these fleets or stories that are part of the platform. And each of them are going to be slightly more effective than the next, with video being probably the premium content that you can post on there. But again, it's fleeting. We get it. We get it, Twitter. We get where you got fleets from. It's fitting, okay? But it's fleeting. It's an hour and a half lifespan, even on video content. And most people who are going to put the time and effort into making a video want it to be evergreen or want it to be more long tail, something that's going to have a shelf life. And that hour and a half really, pulls away from that. So then what kind of video content do you post out there, right? Is it ad content? Is it updates? Maybe like I like to use it from time to time. That's a decision you need to make for your organization, but understanding what media types are successful on that platform and its intended use, so you're not jamming that square peg in a round hole, that you're actually using the platform the way it was intended to, is going to have to be part of your strategy. So keeping all of that in mind, is Twitter the right call for your business? Unfortunately, without sitting down with you and doing an analysis of your product and your delivery strategy, I wouldn't be able to tell you that right off the bat. But hopefully, with the information that I've put together here today, you are better equipped to make the decision about whether or not Twitter is going to fit into your strategy. And if so, how is it going to fit into your strategy? So again, thank you for hanging out with me. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting that subscribe button, that like button. It means a ton to me, and is always the only ask I have is watching these videos. Come hang out with me. Drop your comments below. How are you using Twitter in your business? Or why did you choose not to use Twitter? Or what do you got to say about what we covered today, right? Was this good information? Was this helpful? I understand some of it might be a little dated. We saw some dates on there, 2017, 2018, and a lot has changed in 2020 with COVID and people's usage of these platforms as well. But I still think it's a strong foundation to make the right decisions for your business. So again, as I do in almost every video, say goodbye twice. Thank you for your time, and until next time, take it easy.